is Congresswoman Pat Schroeder. And if you do not know who she is, she was the first elected female representative in Colorado's history. And she also represented the state of Colorado from 1973 to 1997. And something I didn't know about you, Congresswoman, was that you have your pilot's license, which is incredible itself. I know when I go on the plane, sometimes I get a little nervous, but you flew these planes, so I don't know how you do it, but God bless you. And Congresswoman, thanks so much for coming on the program today. We greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you. My goodness.
But what the heck made you want to get a pilot's license?
When I was young, I got it when I was 16.
Right.
My father said that the most important thing about going to college was learning to pay my own way.
Okay.
And so luckily, I found I could go to the University of Minnesota and they would let me rent the airplanes from the ROTC thing for $10 an hour. And I could then adjust aviation losses while I went to school. So I was able to pay for my way through college.
Wow, that's quite a story.
Yeah, so I did that. And then actually after I got elected, it made no sense to fly anymore because it's like 2,000 miles from Washington to Denver, and you never make it every weekend. We didn't have a jet. We didn't have that kind of money. So that was kind of the end of my really being able to do it, but it was a way to get myself through school, and I enjoyed it.
I do want to kick this around now. Now, you did study law at Harvard Law School. With that said, you know, you had your whole life ahead of you after that. And then you go into the swamp of Washington, D.C., which are not my president, I'm not a fan of him, but what he calls it, it is the swamp of Washington, D.C., and you run for Congress. What made you want to run for Congress after going to such a prestigious law school such as Harvard?
Well, to be honest, we were very active in the anti-war group. We were also the plaintiffs on the busing suit in Colorado. We are very active in fair housing and in desegregating schools. And a lot of those things, you know, just drove us to be very interested in politics. And what we had in 1972 was a very, very conservative guy running as an incumbent and a Republican. And then the Democrats decided, well, they'd run a really conservative guy too. So a group of young, you know, bucks all decided, no, we got to have someone else, at least in the primary. So they all assured me I would never win. but I mean, the rest is history. I entered the primary being assured I'd never win, but we did. So that's what happened.
You know, as a person that's a history guy, a student of politics myself, your story as far as winning that election, it reminds me of the stories now of a lot of females that are progressives. You know, we look at AOC and a lot of the squad members that won, and they faced, you know, establishment people, and they won where they thought that they would never win or they would never have a shot. So it's almost like history, and maybe you disagree with this, but it's almost like when you got in to now, history is repeating itself, where we've seen even in 2018, we've seen the most women elected in 2018 than in history. Are you seeing that right now, that women that weren't supposed to win are winning now? They're beating men, and not even just that, women are winning in general right now.
Yes, finally. My husband always says that I was the AOC of 1972. When I got elected, there were 14 women in the House, if you can believe it. And half of them had run after their husbands had died. And the interesting thing is I went to the older one that was the dean of the women. And, you know, you go over and you say, oh, hello, you're my dean, you know. I'm here, and what should I call you? And she says, my name is Mrs. John Sullivan. And I said, well, I knew that, but I wondered what I should call you. And she said, you can call me by my name. It's Mrs. John Sullivan. I am not just a woman. So basically, we only had about 7 or 8 women that really considered themselves women. The rest were carrying on their husband's mantle. It was a crazy, crazy thing.
Can you talk about the sexism that you faced and how it's still going on right now?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the good news is it's better, but it just, it's a change, and so many people do not want to think that women can ever be competitive. I used to always have guys say to me, "You were a mistake, right? I mean, you'll never get reelected." They probably thought you were a man, right, with the name Pat. Um, it's just like that's a whole new opening. I think it's probably the same with Hispanics and blacks and Asians. I mean, they really saw it as a white male world. And when I got there, that's clearly what it was. And of course, I'll never forget in 1994, 92, when we had 10% women. We were so excited it got up to 10%. And I'm standing on the floor during the swearing in, and some old bull comes over and says to me, "Well, I certainly hope you're happy. This place is looking like a shopping mall."
Oh, geez,
And I
that's
said,
terrible.
"Wow, where do you shop? We're only 10% are women." Of course, he didn't laugh, but I mean, it's just that it's theirs, and it shouldn't happen. And of course, this president is just terrible about that. You see so many pictures, and there are hardly any women in there, or if they are, they're young, beautiful, know their place type.
I do want to keep capitalizing on your congressional career. During your time in Congress, I know you were on all kinds of different committees. With that said, what were some of the toughest decisions that you made while in Congress?
Well, the very beginning, when I went on armed services, the chairman had vetoed me, had blackballed me. He did not want me. They had decided that there weren't any women on the committee, and there was also a young African American from Oakland named Ron Dellums, and they decided it was very important to finally have an African American on there, and he had been vetoed too. So the very first day, Ron and I walk into this committee thinking we're big deals. Oh, look at us, we're going to be on this committee. And the chairman just blows up. He's like, "This is the worst. No chairman's veto's ever been overridden before. Whoever's going to want to be a chairman if you don't have the power to pick decent people for your committee." And he goes on, and he says, "But I do have some power left. I get to decide how many chairs are at the dais. And these 2 newcomers are only worth half of the rest of you. So they get 1 chair." So Ron and I shared a chair for 2 years. My friend Barney Frank used to always introduce me saying it was the only half-assed thing I did when I was in Congress, which I don't think is quite true. But so what we did, his name was Hebert, Eddie Hebert from New Orleans, Louisiana. And I had buttons made saying, "Help, I have a bear by the tail." Although I think it was really the other way around. And we talked to the press about it. We did all sorts of things. People kept saying, "No, you don't do that. When you're a freshman, you come and you keep a very low profile. And then, if you wait long enough, it'll be your turn, and then you can do things." We're like, no, this is not good. And so in 1974, the Watergate babies came, which meant we had a whole new influx of freshmen. A lot of guys lost their seats during the impeachment of Nixon, which was great. And they changed the rules. They changed the rules saying that all of the chairmen had to be elected by the caucus and my dear chairman was thrown out. And so that was really a wonderful thing. So, I mean, and then there were so many things about the war. I mean, the town was full of tear gas and demonstrators. It was a very difficult time. So I would say that when the war plus impeachment made it really quite an exciting beginning.
I want to talk about an issue that's important to you, and it should be important to everybody that lives in the country, and it was the Family Medical Leave Act. I know that was a huge piece of legislation that you pushed for, finally was passed, I believe, under President Obama. You can correct me if I'm wrong. How do you feel about the act as it's passed right now, and how can you tell the viewers of where you believe it needs to go right now?
Oh, it's way too little. It's so embarrassing. It used to be we had nothing compared to every other state or every other country. Now we've got this little pitiful thing, but it's the least of any. We had to water it down so much to pass it, and it took me 9 years, okay? We did pass it once before. We passed it under George H.W. Bush, and he vetoed it. And we were furious because we had gone in and we had gotten a commitment from him saying he was for it when he was campaigning for president. And he said, well, I'm for it in idea, but I just didn't mean it should be in law. I'm like, oh, yeah, that is just great. So we had to, one of the things we had done way back in 1988, when I was so frustrated trying to get this thing done, is that we did what we called a Great American Family Tour. We took Gary David Goldberg, who was then producing a TV show called Family Ties, and we went around and talked about how important this was with Dr. Brazelton, who was a famous pediatrician. And we were drawing bigger crowds than the presidential candidates that year. And we were telling everybody to tell them to please back family medical leave and all the other stuff we were talking about. Well, actually they did, and we passed it. George H.W. Bush had gotten elected, and then he vetoed it. But the good news is one of the states we went to was Arkansas, and then Clinton was the governor. So he saw the kind of crowds we were getting. And when he got elected in 1972, we passed it again, and he signed it. But again, it got so watered down. It was kind of like the Health Care Act. You know, the Republicans want to put all these amendments on it, and they play with you saying, you know, if I could just have this amendment, I might be able to vote for it. And people get excited thinking, oh, well, you know, maybe we need their votes. And then they do it, and then they don't vote for it. So, you know, I mean, Obama saw that with the Obamacare, the same kind of thing. So we really need to make it better. Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask Congresswoman, this is Congresswoman Pat Schroeder, and we're talking about all things politics and her career in general. Congresswoman, my thing is, how do we fix the partisanship in our country? We see it in the media, we see it on Capitol Hill. But my thing is, I feel like almost like, and especially the Republicans, they really play up this partisanship, and it's almost like they really don't want to get anything done in Congress. So how can you fix the problem if you have one party that doesn't want to do anything, period?
You vote them out.
That's true.
It's just that simple. I mean, Mitch McConnell has to go. What are there, over 200 bills sitting on his desk? He doesn't even bring them up.
Right.
I mean, you know, that's just criminal. He doesn't even bring them up for a vote. So you wonder how they take their pay in good conscience, you know?
Yeah. Well, not even just that. And I want to get into this with the next question and talking about issues that are happening right now in Congress and with the election going on. You know, we saw that Congress went away right now. And the Congress of, you know, the Democratic Party, as far as the House, they passed the $600 bill to try to make sure that people that were unemployed would get that $600. The Senate did not pass that bill. And now President Trump did pass the $300. That only lasts for 3 weeks. And if you make less than $100 in state employment, you can't even get that money. So my thing is, and it just goes right back to what you just spoke about, Congresswoman, do you believe that the Congress will get any kind of legislation passed to help people that are unemployed before the 2020 election? Because not only unemployment, but businesses need help. The medical workers need this gear for the COVID-19, and no one's getting any kind of money. And that's why I believe that there's a lot of the crime on the streets, because people don't have the money.
Right. No, I agree. Well, there's one thing that hopefully they can make work, and that is, at the end of this month, the whole federal government runs out of money. I mean, that's the end of the fiscal year, September 30th, boom. So everything gets shut down. Remember, the stupid Republicans have allowed them to shut the government down a couple times, but hopefully they won't do it in an election year. I mean, I hope they won't do it in an election year. So I think Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have a lot to push on to try and get them to do it. But my understanding is they've got a lot of hard heads there that are not moving. So I don't know.
It's scary,
it is
Congresswoman.
very scary. And I'm hoping that Mitch McConnell gets defeated and that the Democrats take over the Senate again, because they haven't passed anything except naming a couple post offices and stuff. It's just, I mean, no matter what happens, they don't do anything.
Can we talk about the 2020 election with that, Congresswoman? My thing is, I am voting personally for Vice President Biden, and I believe that he'll be a good president, and especially with the people around him too also. What do you feel about what's going on right now with the 2020 election? There's so many issues. We look at the economy struggling right now, people out of work, the COVID-19 crisis is going on right now. And we now see President Trump telling Republican voters in North Carolina at a campaign stop to vote twice. They're defunding the post office. So there's so many issues right now with the 2020 election. Can you speak about what you think about it as a former member of Congress?
I keep saying to people, if you really love this democracy and if you love this country and what it stands for, you better vote, and you better make sure your vote counts. I keep wondering what country Donald Trump was raised in. I don't really know very many Democrats. I don't think I've ever met Democrats that are Americans, that are so negative and so ignorant about the whole, government and how it works. He thinks he's king. I mean, there's just no question. He thinks he's king, and he thinks he can do whatever he wants to do. And he said it from day one. I can go kill somebody, I'm really sorry, people. That is not the way America works. No one's above the law. Excuse me, including him.
Well, my thing is, Congresswoman, for people like me that are millennials that are growing up in this crazy world, we see the president stoking race as far as he's running around the country. We saw him raise the Bible the wrong way, actually, at first, before he corrected himself for a photo op, while they were gassing people that were protesting in the streets. Cops are shooting black people all over the place in this country, and the president is condoning it. So my question is for you, with all this stuff going on, people being unemployed, crime going up, and I know the president's blaming it on Joe Biden, but Mr. President, Joe Biden is not the president of the United States now. You are. So I don't know how Joe Biden could be making the crime go up in your country that you're leading. Are you afraid of a race war going on in this country if the president does get reelected?
I don't know what to be afraid of. I'm just afraid if he gets elected. I don't know. I mean, the guy, I would hate to get into his mind, because his tweets every day just get more and more bizarre. And unfortunately, he has all these people around him, like the Attorney General Barr, and others that will do whatever he says. So it's a very scary time. And if one person ever tells me their vote doesn't matter, boy, have I got some talking to do to them, because this is boy, does it matter. It matters big time. And I don't really think we can survive another 4 years of them. I think we're going to be right where the Venezuelans and I keep hearing some of my friends from Latin America saying that they think Joe Biden's a socialist and they're going to vote for Trump. And I'm like, you are crazy. Trump is the one who looks like all the dictators that you see down there. Come on. He's the one. He's about me, 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 me. And the rest of you are dirt,
If anybody that thinks Joe Biden is a socialist is in a dream world by themselves. With that post office being defunded, and we're seeing seniors are worried about getting their medication in the mail, and anybody paying their bills on time due to the mail being, all over the place right now, and benefits checks too that people get in the mail. Are you worried about this? Are you worried about people that are going to be voting by mail? Because there's going to be millions upon millions of people, more than any time before in history, voting by mail. And the president is trying to do this almost as an election scam to try to win re-election.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he's going to tell people to vote twice. And he's going to, he's going to claim he won no matter what and say the rest was all phony. No, we're in for some very rough days ahead, I honestly think. But the one thing I've got to say is you've got to vote, and vote early. Vote as early as you can. If you're going to vote by mail, you can also track and make sure they got your ballot. You can, and the good thing about paper ballots is they're paper ballots. They can't play with the machine. True, so the Russians, we now know the Russians are back in playing in this whole race again. The Russians cannot hack your paper ballot. So that's a good thing too. So a lot of this is just to get you scared or to make you believe that your vote isn't going to count anyway. It is, if you make it count.
I agree with you 100%, Congresswoman. So the president's going to claim that he won, and if Joe Biden gets a lot of these mail-in ballots and ends up winning the presidency, there's going to be riots in the streets. We're going to see the same stuff that happened in 2000 in Florida, where the Republicans are going to bring their congressional aides down here, whether it's in Florida, Wisconsin, Ohio, wherever it may be. And they're going to start doing all these protests and acting crazy and stirring this up again. So I agree with Secretary Clinton said this the other day. Joe Biden cannot concede this election, period, end of story.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. 2000 was pathetic. We cannot do it again.
Right.
Absolutely. And let me tell you one of the things I worry about in Florida. I worry very much about the polling, because the polling is polling people who live here, right? There's a whole lot of people called snowbirds who pretend like they live here, who are not here in September, October, November. They all vote by mail, like the president votes by mail. Right. Nobody ever polls them. And they tend to be only interested in one thing, not having their taxes go up. And they really know nothing about local people. They really don't care. They just want to make sure Republicans win, and because they think that'll keep their taxes down. Mm-hmm. And so I want to see a strong number here in Florida. I really want to see Florida be for Biden. I'm so old, I remember when Florida used to be progressive. And I honestly think most of the people here are, but those doggone snowbirds come in and really kill us in places like, Sarasota, the West Coast, the East Coast, where they live. That's very troubling. And our polls don't show them in their polls, because they're being polled somewhere else,
Congresswoman Schroeder, what I'm worried about, and I agree with what you're saying, is too that, but I hope that the Biden campaign really, because we saw in 2016 that the Hillary campaign thought that they had some of these states in the bag, such as Michigan and Wisconsin. They slowly stopped going to those places. I think that the Biden campaign has to really push in every swing state in the country. I don't care if the poll rather shows him up by 10, 15 points. They have to keep pushing and hammering that message because, like you said, the polls, they're wrong. They don't matter.
Right. The poll, the only one that counts is the one on election day.
Right, 100%. And I feel like the Democrats are really having trouble with the message here because I really hear this by Democrats saying that Medicare for all is overwhelmingly popular with seniors, and they're getting Medicare right now. 89% of the Democratic base is for Medicare for all. The Green New Deal, it will put people back to work and infrastructure jobs in the millions. But also see if you have college, without debt, these students, they won't have they'll have free college. With free college, these students will not have to pay debt for their whole lives, and we can educate them and make sure they have these good paying jobs. Social Security, we should make sure that all these people are paying into the system so that seniors can live in dignity and respect, into their late years, and they don't have to worry about cutting pills in half and everything else. So do you feel like the Democrats have a bad messaging strategy on explaining programs like this that will help all Americans, not just rich Americans?
No, I think it's very clear that, first of all, you have to undo the huge tax cut for the rich that the president gave away. True. I mean, that was trillions of dollars of debt, okay? Number two, they have explained over and over again that the Green New Deal will create jobs and those people then pay taxes. Duh. And the kids that get out of college get jobs and they're higher paying and they pay taxes. Duh. I mean, these are investments in the future. If you look at it, and of course the infrastructure is such a mess. China has poured more cement in 3 years than the United States has in a century. I mean, our roads are, all of that needs to be done. And you know what? That also creates jobs and they pay taxes. Duh. So you get the money back that you shouldn't have let go from the very wealthy who didn't do anything but just buy their own stock back. It hasn't, that trickle down thing has never worked. No one's even felt damp from that. So I think they're right. And I just, people just are denying it. They don't want to hear what makes so much common sense.
Right. Last two questions, and Congresswoman, again, thank you so much for your time. Can we speak about these two situations? One will be good for the Democratic Party, one will be bad. If Joe Biden wins, can we speak about that situation and what you think will come from a Joe Biden victory for this country? And what comes with the Democratic Party if President Trump does win this election?
Well, I refuse to think about losing. We've just got to win. And I think if Biden wins, he's got tremendous talent from that whole pool that ran for president to pick for cabinet officials, for people that we already know now, have been exposed to, that we respect. I think he'll get off and running. He knows it. My goodness, he got elected the same year I did. So yeah, he knows Washington, believe me. And so it'll be entirely different than the Trump campaign.
And last, as we close the interview, Congresswoman, can you give some advice to the young people that are really cynical in politics? They believe, as you said, their vote doesn't matter. There's some of the people that are upset that Bernie Sanders didn't get the nomination. There's people that are upset with Joe Biden as the nominee, say they're not going to vote, say they're going to vote third party. But what would you say to these young people that are cynical about politics and, their candidate did not win and they're upset and they're going to boycott it?
Well, Joe Biden wasn't my first choice either, but there is absolutely no question what the choice is now. I keep saying to young people, this is not like you're choosing a marriage partner, that you want somebody who's perfect. You're never going to get a perfect. But my word, I mean, you're picking which bus you're going to get on, the bus that goes forward or the bus that keeps us back here and goes backward. I always say Democrats are for, the D means drive, and Republicans, the R means reverse. And it's just, you know, get it through your head. The other thing you've got to say to young people, I was so frustrated last time. The League of Women Voters registered a whole lot of young people at UCF, and then they didn't vote. You know, their votes didn't show up. So I went over and said, what went on? And they said, oh, no, we voted. We voted online.
Online?
You can't vote online unless you're in space. So I honestly think that's what the Russians were doing. Were convincing young people they could vote online because they knew it wouldn't matter. So watch for that. I honestly think we're going to see that again. I think that worked to write out a whole bunch of young people's votes. You know, if you really care about your future and you don't think the government matters, I'm very worried about your brain. Yeah, because I mean, the government does matter tremendously, and your vote is the one way you can have some real input into it. So let's hope they do.
Congresswoman, though, I wonder, and I'll end the interview with this. I wonder, you know, I know you just said you spoke to those young people. They said they voted online. I wonder where they are mentally, because you can watch any channel on TV and, you know, you watch CNN, MSNBC, Fox, whatever it may be. They show the people lined up to the polls. We learned this and I know that a lot of these school districts have defunded a lot of history and civics classes, and they only teach certain things now. But, you know, we hear this online, and these people are very in tech that they're voting online. It boggles my mind. I don't know. When you just said that, I'm thinking, oh my God, what the heck is wrong with the people you were talking about?
And they're in college, okay? No, they're getting their news online, you know, and their Facebook, and we know that the Russians are very good at playing those games. So beware, be very aware. They're back again this year, and they're in better, you know, they're much better than they were last time. So
this was great, and I really enjoyed this. This was Congresswoman Pat Schroeder. Thanks so much, and let's do this again down the road